Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Arbitrary 20. In this video we're going to be talking about the changes to the wizard in the 2024 revision of D&D. We'll mainly be talking about what these changes mean for different multi-class builds and some potential new builds that these changes might open up. So we'll go ahead and get started with spellcasting at level 1. The number of prepared spells now is a fixed number on the wizard table. This is standard now for pretty much all of the spellcasters. You can replace one cantrip per long rest now. That's a pretty decent buff in terms of versatility. I don't think it'll change any builds per se, but it could make some of those less used, more situational cantrips used more often. And then spellbooks can be used as a spellcasting focus. Backing up your spellbook is faster and cheaper. And then ritual casting has been removed because every class can ritual cast now, but wizard gets ritual adept, which still lets them cast from their spellbook even if they don't have it prepared. So that is a buff to all the other spellcasting classes that didn't previously have ritual casting, but wizard is still going to be the best at it because they don't have to prepare their ritual spells. They can just cast them out of their spellbook. And then at level 2 we'll get Scholar, which will let us have expertise in Arcana, History, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, or Religion. And then the Wizard subclass has been moved to level 3, just like for every other class. All Wizard subclasses now get 2 free spells from their school and another free spell each time they get access to a new level of spell slot. That change replaces all of the Savant abilities that the Wizard subclasses used to have, which those were pretty bad and rarely ever came up. I'd say this is a pretty big buff. I don't think the Wizard needed access to even more spells, but this is a good feature and will feel a lot better when you're leveling up your wizard. And then for the Abjurer, Arcane Ward can now be refilled directly using spell slots, and you get Counterspell and Dispel Magic always prepared, and they don't use spell slots if they fail. There is another important change to Arcane Ward that they didn't list in that article. Arcane Ward now says whenever you cast an Abjuration spell with a spell slot, the ward regains hit points. So things like the Armor of Shadows Eldritch Invocation don't work anymore. So now, as far as I know, there's no way to infinitely refill the Arcane Ward outside of combat, which is a pretty big nerf, but I still think this is a good feature. And then the Diviner is largely the same, although the third eye gives 120 foot dark vision and the ability to cast See Invisibility without a spell slot. So a little bit of a buff there to the third eye feature, but the Diviner is for the most part the same. I think the main draw to the Diviner was always Portent, and that's still there and pretty much the same as it was. And then for the Evoker, Potent Cantrip and Sculpt spells have swapped places. Potent Cantrip now applies to missed attacks as well as successful saving throws. So I think this is a good change overall. When you're at lower levels, you'll have less spell slots to use, so you'll be using your cantrips more often. So you'll probably get more use out of Potent Cantrip, getting it at level 3 instead of level 6. And not having Sculpt spells at level 5 is going to feel a little bit rough when you get Fireball and Lightning Bolt and things like that. But then you'll be fine from level 6 onward. And then lastly we have the Illusionist. You can ignore verbal components for illusion spells and cast Minor Illusion as a bonus action. And one thing they're not mentioning there is that you're still able to create a sound and an image at the same time with Minor Illusion. So that's a pretty big buff there, letting you do it as a bonus action. And with how the new spell rules work, even if you cast a leveled spell with your action, you'll still be able to cast Minor Illusion as a bonus action. The spell rules now just say you can only cast one leveled spell per turn. So whether you want to make that your action or your bonus action, it doesn't really matter. So now you are able to cast a spell as an action and a cantrip as a bonus action, whereas before you were only able to cast a spell as a bonus action and a cantrip with your action, which I think this makes a lot more sense. The only drawback this one may have compared to the previous rule is that if you cast a leveled spell with your action or your bonus action and an enemy responds with a counter spell, you can't counterspell them back because you've already cast a leveled spell on this turn, and using counterspell as your reaction would be another leveled spell on this turn. So it does kind of prevent those counterspell wars between two creatures. And then at level 6 the Illusionist gets Summon Beast and Summon Fae as always prepared, and you can cast them once per long rest without a spell slot. You can also make the spell an illusion spell too, which just sort of changes how it looks, and it makes it so you could ignore verbal components as well. The only thing I don't like about this feature is you still need the material components, and just like in Tasha's, the material components are still fairly costly for these spells. So if you're in a campaign where getting costly components is difficult for whatever reason, you may want to consider a different subclass, or you just might not be able to take advantage of your level 6 ability if you do go with Illusionist. And another important thing that they don't mention here is Illusory Reality got a similar change to the Arcane Ward reward feature on Abjurer. It now only lets you use illusory reality with spells that use a spell slot, so you can no longer use minor illusion and make something in that minor illusion real. And that's it for the subclasses. At level 5 we get Memorize Spell. We saw a version of this in the playtest and lets you swap one prepared spell for one in your spellbook each short rest. So just like some of the earlier changes, not really going to make or break any builds, but it is nice in terms of versatility. And then no changes until level 18 where we get Spell Mastery. The chosen spells now must have a casting time of 1 action but count as always prepared, and you can swap the spell on a long rest rather than using 8 hours of steady, but only 1 per long rest. So I think this is a nerf overall to Spell Mastery. I think that second line doesn't matter a whole lot, but the casting time of 1 action is a pretty big deal. Some of the most picked things for this were bonus actions or reactions, Shield, Absorb Elements, Silvery Barbs, Misty Step, so none of those are options anymore for Spell Mastery, which is a pretty big nerf, but I think it's fine. Those spells I just mentioned are some of the most powerful low-level spells in the game, and there's still some good picks within the spells that have an action casting time. And then lastly, at level 19, just like every other class, we get an epic boon feat, but they did show another one here, the Boon of Spell Recall. The Boon of Spell Recall, you can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 30, and when you cast a spell using a level 1 to 4 spell slot, roll a d4, and if you roll the spell's level, the slot isn't expended. I don't think this one's very good, so you have a 25% chance to get one of your low level spells back. At this point you have all the way up to 9th level spells, and you have plenty of those lower level spell slots. If you really need an extra cast of one of those spells, you could upcast it to 5th or even 6th level. I definitely don't think this would be my first choice for an epic boon feat, but if you're several epic boons in and you're making your intelligence like a 24, this might be worth it. I don't know how many campaigns will get that far, but it is technically possible. But it looks like that's all the changes to the wizard. In the last video I talked about the druid. If you'd like to check that out, it'll be right here. And in the next video it looks like we'll be talking about the ranger, so hope to see you there. And thank you guys for watching. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.